Now we have browned the beef stew. This is the beef. It's cooking already. I have already seasoned it, with the seasoned salt, onion powder, garlic powder, salt, pepper, um, Mrs. Dash, other seasoning that you like to season. I already have turned it over. It's cooking pretty good. I'm browning it because the brown is what's going to make the brown color in the stew. And two, the flour that's on it is going to thicken, help it also to thicken. You can also add a little extra flour if it's not thick enough, or cornstarch or something. Okay, now I'm going to finish cutting up the vegetables for the pot roast. And I'm going to be cooking it in a crock pot. Yes, I got my crock pot ready. So now let's go cut up the vegetables that we have for the pot roast. Now here's the vegetables I'm going to put in there also. They have the carrots and the celery. I've already cut the celery. I'll use this right here. It comes in handy when it comes to skinning the celery. It's the carrots. It's really handy in skinning the carrots, okay? We also got going to prepare the potatoes. And if you don't have for the tomato sauce, tomato paste, you could also puree tomato or something and put it in there. If you don't have the tomato paste, I got to cut the potatoes, and I can use beef bouillon to help add flavor to the pot roast broth. You can also use beef broth. And if you don't have the beef broth, you can use bouillon. If you have both, it's more flavor. Okay, so I'm gonna use this where the chunks of beef is already cooking, so I'm gonna cut this up so we can add it to the pot roast. Now, it's up to you about how wide you want to cut the carrots. I'm gonna cut it in slices. So sometimes I cut it in chunks, even if they're not all even, because sometimes I like the big chunks. That way, the pot roast, when it's cooking, it's going to absorb the flavor anyway of the carrots. So I'm going to finish cutting this up, and then I'm going to cut the celery up, small thing. Oh, don't forget I have to cut the onion too. Forgot to mention that I'm also using onion. Yeah, cut that up also. Now I cut up the carrots. I got two different sizes, but for the celery, I kind of don't want a whole bunch of chunks in it. I'm going to put some chunks in it. That way I could choose whether or not I want the chunks. But I want this right here. I cut it up small so it can disappear into, it's going to cook so much until you ain't even going to tell the celery is in there. But the celery do add extra flavor to to your stew. It's like a flavor enhancer. So I'm going to kind of, this right here, I'm cutting it small because it's going to kind of like disappear after it cooks. It's going to cook so until it's going to cook into the broth of the pot roast. So I'm going to put some bigger chunks in there too. Sometimes a lot of people don't like celery, but you can choose to eat it or you can choose to take it out, but it's going to definitely have the flavor of the small celery because this is just going to cook in there, so it's going to definitely have celery flavor, which is like a flavor enhancer cooked into the pot roast. Okay, see how I got some of this celery cut up really small? It's going to cook all in there and it's going to kind of like disappear into the broth. And the celery, some people like celery, so when you cook for more than one person, they can take it out if it's, because I made some of them big, and the carrots, some small, some big. It's still in the stew, and the celery is small because like a flavor enhancer. I really want that flavor to get up in there. So it's gonna cook so long until it's gonna kind of evaporate into the pot roast flavoring. Now it's time to put the beef chunks into the pot roast. It's all brown, and I'm gonna put it into the pot roast and prepare to cook it. So now I'm going to put the beef into my crock pot. I don't want to put the oil in there because I'm going to use that to cook my onions and stuff in it. I'm going to saute the onions and cook them a little bit so that it can be tender, so it can kind of cook into the kind of disappear into into the sauce, the pot roast stuff. Now that we got the beef into the into the crock pot, now let's go cut up the onions now. Now I just put some butter in the skillet that I just took the pot roast out of. It's because that I had browned it in, because the extra stuff is going to give the onions a little more flavor. The butter going to melt it so that I can saute the onions and cook them a little bit. So let me get the onions prepared, and I'm going to put them in here. Now, because I want the onions to kind of disappear, I'm going to cut the onions small, because I'm going to puree them. I'm going to cook them into that oil that I had over there. But I want the onions to disappear, because I want them to be cooked all into the pot roast. Not to have chunks. If you like chunks of onion, you can put it. You can put so you can see it. So if you like the chunks, and then you can put them in chunks. But I like it where all of the flavor will just disappear into like seasoning of the pot roast. Okay, so I'm gonna put this in with cook this, saute it. Now I'm gonna cook this in here with the celery. Put this in here. I'm gonna let this cook a little bit, get a little of the flavor out, and put a little onion powder, maybe a little garlic in here, bring out more flavor, and then I'm gonna add it to the pot roast. But this is gonna cook in until it's going to kind of like turn into just seasoning. Now I'm gonna let this saute a little bit, and then I'm gonna add it to the crock pot. Okay, and then I'm going to go get my beef bouillon. I'm going to make beef bouillon broth and add it to it. And this onion should increase the flavor of the beef bouillon, because you can use beef broth already in the made broth, but I'm going to use the beef bouillon cube, make the solution, with the water, and I'm going to add this to it, and then I'm going to add all the other vegetables to it. Now I'm going to add a little Mrs. Dash, because all this is going into the crock pot, and it's all going to cook together. And I put a little, I had already put a little garlic powder on it, and I have a little Italian seasoning. It has like basil, and it has a lot of seasoning in there, like the basil and the, like basil, oregano, and it has the basil and stuff already in here. This is Italian seasoning. So have your basil. I think I have bay leaves in here too, I'm not sure. But you see how the celery is also disappearing with the onion. So I'm going to put this in here and let this kind of cook with the pot roast. Okay, and then I'm going to go get the vegetables. Okay, so now I'm going to add the other celery and the carrots to it, because it takes carrots a long time to cook. So that's why I added with the thing. It could cook 4 hours and it still won't like fall apart. So I'm gonna put this into the crock pot with the beef. As you can see, the beef in here. Now I'm going to get the beef broth bouillon. The beef broth bouillon in there. Now I'm not going to add the potatoes yet. I'm going to let it cook for like, maybe like an hour or hour and a half, because this is going to be a 4-hour crock pot cook. 4 hours in this crock pot. And then if it's not tender enough for me, which it should be, then I could just add a little more time to it. But I'm going to wait about an hour or hour and a half before I add the potatoes, so it could cook like 2 hours, because I don't want the potatoes to turn to mush. I want the potatoes to take the flavor, but I don't want it to turn into mashed potatoes. Now I'm going to add the beef bouillon, beef stock in here, so that to give it a flavor. It's going to cook in this. This tastes really good. The flavor, I even tasted this bouillon is really, really good. So we're going to let this cook before I add the potatoes to it. So now we're going to let this cook. So I'm going to set the crock pot to, let me see, 4 hours. See, I have set it to 4 hours. Just gonna cook at a little higher temperature. You can set it to 6 or 8. You could go to work, come back home, and your dinner be ready. So I'm setting it right here, and in about an hour, I would have put the potatoes in it, and it's gonna cook slow with everything else. Now, once it says cook for like 2 hours, maybe like 1.5, you want to put the potatoes in halfway of them cooking, because sometimes you might do 8, and you might do, you want to put in there 4 hours after being cooked 4 hours. But I'm only doing 4, somewhere in like an hour or so, because then I'm ready to add the potatoes. I only cooked a little bit, so now it's time to add the potatoes. Add a few right now. So this is the crock pot. So we're going to add the potatoes. It's going to cook for 3 or more hours. So now there we go. We got to add the potatoes and the thing. It's got a long ways to cook. So there you go. There's all the ingredients for the beef stew. It's got a long time to cook. This is crock pot beef stew. It's set for 4 hours. And after 4 hours, you'll be able to enjoy.